welcome back to another episode of Robeast Reviews. I am your host, Robeast. Today's episode is my top 7 most wanted Marvel Legends figures. That's right, top 7. I figure everybody does top 10s or top 5s. Born in 77, I love that number, so I just to make it sort of my own, we're doing top 7 on this list. And probably that will be top 7 for all future most wanted, or list videos. So top 7 here. So we're doing top 7 most wanted Marvel Legends figures with a couple caveats though. First, these are comic book look only figures. I do not collect MCU based figures, or even at this point, video game based figures. I grew up in the comic books. That's, how I sort of grew my love for these characters and for comic books as a whole. Growing up with the sort of classic looks for all these characters. Not a huge fan of the MCU looks anyways, insofar as I just prefer the more simplified sort of iconic comic book looks. And that's not criticism of the MCU. I enjoy the MCU films themselves immensely, and I appreciate what, the MCU and the creators behind the MCU have done to sort of give us believable, quote unquote, believable or more reasonable takes on a lot of our favorite comic book characters' costumes, balancing a sort of fantastical, comic book inspired look, but still making it look like, something like a uniform or something somebody would actually put on and wear. And I appreciate what they do. I do think that they're good at that. But when it comes down to a toy on my shelf, I just prefer the comic book looks. Again, I grew up in the comics. Those are the version of the characters that I most love, because, those are ingrained in my brain. For a lot of people in this day and age, the first versions of those characters that they became aware of and loved is the MCU, the film versions. And that's totally fine. This isn't a criticism against, people who buy MCU figs. That's sort of the motto of my channel, is to each their own, buy what you love. They just don't do it for me. And, they definitely produce more than enough comic book looks to keep me buying. So first caveat, no MCU or video game based characters. Although I do own a couple of the looks for the Spider-Man game, the Sony Spider-Man game. I just really did like the look of, and I love Spider-Man and the Spider-Man sort of pocket of Marvel Universe. That's one of my major loves. The Spider-Man villain Rogues Gallery will always be my favorite. I know I like Batman's Rogues Gallery as well, but to me, there's something kind of fun and over the top and real crazy about Spidey's Rogues Gallery. But I just love also his little pocket of Marvel. And again, I bought some of those video game based looks just because I thought they were cool looks. Anyways, back to the list. So the first caveat, no MCU figures. Second caveat, these are all figures or characters that have never been released by Hasbro or even Toy Biz. So these are figures that just have been left off the production lists. As we get in the list, you'll probably understand why. This is my list. I have very specific tastes. To each their own, as I've already said. You may not agree with this list. That's fine. This is my personal list. And let me also reiterate, none of these figures that will be on this list not only have they not been announced that they're getting made, there's a good chance some of them may never get made. That's fine. I've come to accept it. They've given me characters like Frogman, some more of the obscure characters that I love. Hasbro's sort of thrown me a bone, and not that they did it for me personally, but they've done a lot of really obscure or maybe lesser loved characters like the Serpent Society. A lot of the characters in there, characters I really do love, and I appreciate that. So, but a lot of these characters, once we get in the list, you may understand why they haven't already been released, and some of them I think are a little weird that they haven't. There is one on this list that sort of breaks that rule of never having been released by Hasbro or Toy Biz, but we'll get into it. But specifically, these have never been released in the Marvel Legends line specifically. So that's my second caveat. First, no MCU. Second, these are all characters that have never been released in the Marvel Legends line as of this date. We will do other lists. I am doing a list. That video should be out shortly after this one of top 7 redo figures or characters I want to see Marvel Legends take a second pass at. It's funny. I recorded versions of these videos of like a week ago, and I wasn't really happy with them. One of the videos I recorded, immediately after I recorded it, Hasbro at their Hasbro Pulse event announced that they're actually giving me, which is that sort of second look Hercules, his sort of costume from the mid 80s up until probably the early 90s, maybe a little bit later, but the sort of H harness Hercules. I just love that look. It's actually my preferred look for Hercules. And they're giving a beautiful looking figure. I still wish the scale on those new, on the sort of modern Hercules was a little bit bigger. He's sort of undersized compared to characters like the Absorbing Man or the Wrecking Crew. Kind of bugs me a little bit, especially since Hasbro's done so well with the scale, done pretty well with the scale for the Marvel Legends figures, especially in the last few years. So that irks me a little bit. But either way, great looking figure. And I kind of was wondering if that was going to happen, but that sort of second look Hercules was on my list. Now I'm going to have to re-record that video anyways because they gave me my Hercules, or they are giving it to us. So anyways, let's get into this list. Again, this is my personal list. You may not agree with these. That's fine. If you don't agree, or if you have a completely different list, let me know in the comments section. But yeah, let's get to it. My top 7 most wanted Marvel Legends figures, first time in line. Number 7, Damon Hellstrom, Son of Satan. So, Damon Hellstrom makes my number 7 on the list. He's number 7, even though he's a character that I actually really love. He's a character at one point I had practically every appearance of back in the days when I was really into collecting comics and completing runs and series, which was a long time ago. But he's a character I really do love. He's number 7 on this list, even though he's probably even though as obscure as he might be to some, I think he's a pretty well-known character. He's probably one of the more well-known characters that will actually be in this list. But he's number 7 for a reason. That reason is he's the one I least expect Marvel Legends to ever sort of give us, at least not at the retail level, at least not standard line that would appear on toy shelves. That's because and this is the classic version of the character, by the way, the original 70s red cape, shirtless version of Hellstrom. That's the version I love. But it's the real 70s. I love those 70s look, when that sort of glam rock look that Marvel was giving some characters at the time. But he's number 7 on this list because he has a giant pentagram on his chest, and I do not expect... I can imagine Hasbro being a little gun shy to put that figure out. Even though it wouldn't offend me, I can imagine some people being a little uptight about it. And I would definitely prefer them to either give us the look and keep with the original look, or never release it all. If they're going to futz around with the design of it and give us a sort of not an upside down pentagram, I just prefer them not do the figure. The other reason he's number 7 is I figured at any point when the Hulu series unfortunately I was really looking forward to the Hulu series. I think most of us can agree it wasn't what we wanted. Either way, when that series came out, that's when I would have assumed Hasbro would have decided to put that figure out, sort of line up with that launch. Although never say never. He's a character I love. I've seen some really great custom figures online. He's one of the few characters or Marvel Legends I've ever considered ordering a custom on, but he's one that I would be real uptight about. It would have to sort of really be perfect in my eyes. I've seen a few that were really close, but I've also seen some ones that looked a little meh. Just because I have a very specific image in my head of the character and, the aesthetic. But either way, I figure he's a character who's been in Marvel since the 70s. He's been, even recently in some of the newer, Avengers comics. I would also maybe be okay down the line with them giving us a sort of updated, sort of the Sons of Midnight era Damon Hellstrom, but I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but I would take it. Some of those looks worked. Like, a huge Morbius fan, and I love the classic, again, sort of glam rock Kiss inspired, Michael Morbius from the 70s look, the classic version. I love that. He's one with the sort of goth, industrial goth look that they gave him in the 90s with the sort of, head to toe leather and the buckles and everything. I think that's one, it's a little dated, but I still think it works okay. He doesn't bother me. In fact, I'm actually a big fan of the Midnight Suns. If they gave us sort of a classic Johnny Blaze at some point, not the classic Johnny Blaze, the sort of Midnight Suns trench coat, Hellfire shotguns era Johnny Blaze, I'd be stoked about that. I actually really like that version. But either way, again, for my number 7, it would be classic 70s comic book version, Damon Hellstrom, Son of Satan. Number 6, Bushmaster. So this version of Bushmaster that I'm specifically talking about is the Serpent Society Snake Man Bushmaster, not the Luke Cage villain that they also did in the Luke Cage live-action Netflix series. Although, to be fair, I wouldn't mind a figure that character either. In fact, if you did all of Luke Cage Power Man's Rogues Gallery, I would be very happy. I do love that. Again, 70s Marvel, sort of one of my sweet spots. Especially Luke Cage, Power Man, Hero for Hire. Spoiler alert, 70s era Luke Cage, yellow billowy shirt and tiara Luke Cage, might appear in one of these lists pretty soon. A redo, please, Hasbro. Give us a figure worthy of Luke. But no, this is the Snake Man version of Bushmaster. As a kid, I grew up on horror films. I grew up on spooky things. For some reason, Snake Men, of all things, sort of really kind of creeped me out. That movie Dreamscape from the early 80s had a guy who transformed into a snake, really creeped me out. There was this really creepy old anti-drug PSA that had a guy, this drug dealer, this pusher, as it used to be known, transforms, slowly throughout the commercial into a snake man. Also freaked me out. So there's something kind of weirdly creepy about Bushmaster. Although most snake men, it's the other way. It's snake head, human body. This one is human-ish head, human head. He's just a creepy human head. And snake body. It's sort of like Globulus from G.I. Joe, which was a figure one of the few G.I. Joe figures I never owned as a kid. Could never find him in store, but I wanted really bad. I thought Globulus was really creepy and cool. Big fan of the Cobra Law. I know some people aren't a huge fan, and I do know a little bit of a divergence from the sort of classic Joe era, but either way, I love Globulus. And I love Bushmaster. I think, building up those sort of more obscure teams that Hasbro sort of doling out slowly over the last few years, Serpent Society with Bushmaster, and then Thunderbolts, and then the New Warriors, and all these teams I do genuinely love, but sort of slowly giving us maybe one figure every year and a half. You really need to get back on the Squadron Supreme, by the way, Hasbro. We'll touch base on that topic again in the near future. But yeah, Bushmaster. What's not to love? Just as even if you don't know the character, which if you don't, I guess I get it. But he is sort of a mainstay. He's been, sort of one of the main characters in the Serpent Society. As other characters come and go, characters like Constrictor and things who sort of become a member and then fall off. Bushmaster's been on there for a long time. Creepy character. He's a half snake man. He's a snake body. He's got like blades and retractable blades or fang. I think they call them fangs. But either way, he's retractable blades out of his hands. What's not to like? If you don't know that character, if you see that figure carded on a store shelf in Target or whatever, he's gonna look cool, man. And I think Hasbro could knock it out of the park. Plus, they've never done that. That's a figure. It's a buck type that I don't know if they could get maybe a ton of reuse out of it, but I think would be really interesting because they've never done it before. I'd be curious to see how they do it. would it be a sort of a wire body, like a soft rubber covered wire body? I don't know. I know those of us who've been collecting toys for a long time know that those aren't always the most sturdy type of figures. Those that, rubber covered wire. Those of us who've had, night crawlers in the past that had those tails tend to fall off or break eventually if you played with too much. Either way, I don't know how. My job isn't to sort of tell Hasbro how to do it. I just want the figure. I think he's cool, and god dang it, I want more Serpent Society members. I could have added 4 or 5 more to this list, but I think Bushmaster is just the most, unique of those characters, and I think he's the coolest looking. Especially, he'd make a really cool toy. So he's number 6, is my Bushmaster. Let's fill out that Serpent Society. Number 5, Gladiator. No, not that Gladiator that everybody knows and loves. Not the Imperial Squadron, not Imperial Squadron, the Shire Imperial Guard, the Imperial Guard, the head of the Imperial Guard for the Shire Empire. Not the sort of mohawked Superman homage. Not the all-powerful Gladiator that everybody knows and that Hasbro's actually given us a few times now. No, I'm talking about the classic Daredevil villain. The one that they sort of gave us in small doses in the Netflix Daredevil series, though he never fully donned his impressively cool comic books inspired costume. We never got Melvin Potter in costume, but we did give I actually liked the way they did the character. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about we're here to talk about getting a classic comic book version of the Melvin Potter Gladiator. Gladiator, again, mainstay Daredevil villain since I think the late or mid 60s, has sort of come and gone. He's sort of, sometimes he's a hero, sometimes he's a bad guy. He's sort of been portrayed as maybe somebody with some mental health issues, or maybe developmentally disabled character. So we've seen different kind of iterations of the character. But either way, I want a comic book accurate Marvel Legends Gladiator figure. I love characters that have saw blades on the back of their wrists. Possibly the single most impractical weapon ever designed. But I love Whirlwind and I love Gladiator. I don't know. If Marvel created a new character tomorrow that had saw blades on the back of their wrists, I'd probably also enjoy them. But to me, he's a great looking figure. I think the look is so iconic. It's a really unique looking character. And I think, again, just he's been around for a long time. He's a mainstay Daredevil villain or Daredevil character. It's just, it's time. We've waited long enough. Those of us who are sort of a fan of Daredevil's Rogues Gallery, spoiler alert, there might be another one on this list. We want a modern or a comic book accurate Melvin Potter Gladiator figure. Let's do it. Marvel Legends. Poor Daredevil needs his filled out Rogues Gallery. Number 4, the Owl. Do you know I was literally just saying about needing more of Daredevil's Rogues Gallery? Well, here we are at number 4 with the Owl, aka Leland Owsley. Much like Melvin Potter's Gladiator, we did see Leland in the live action Netflix Daredevil TV series. Again, much like Melvin. Never saw him in his quote unquote costume, which we will get into. Much more, sort of grounded version of the character, but performed greatly in that Daredevil TV series. But this is a character that I'm sure most of you, if you've never seen the character, the first time you see him, you're like, why is Wolverine in a Sherlock Holmes cosplay? I remember I grew up as a kid reading, the handbook to the Marvel Universe, DC Who's Who, these sort of guidebooks, character guidebooks to those individual comic book universes. And I remember the Owl wasn't a character I had actually encountered in an actual comic. The first time I came across him was in the handbook to the Marvel Universe. And I remember thinking just that, like, what is this? this Wolverine's brother? What is this guy? Who is this dude? But despite that, he's a long-standing character. He's been around for decades. He's been sort of a mainstay villain, or sort of thorn in Daredevil's side. I think he actually, he's actually encroached out into further corners of the Marvel Universe. He's, sort of encountered Spider-Man, and I think he's actually had a wider berth than maybe Gladiators had. But again, he's a long-standing Daredevil villain. As a toy, I think he'd be really cool and kind of easy. Obviously, Marvel Legends have given us tons of suited characters. They've given us trench-coated characters. Although, if you've been buying Marvel Legends for a long time, the actual mechanics of their trench-coated figures could use some work. They need to maybe re-engineer it. A lot of the time, the arms don't actually fully go down to the sides, but that's a different video. Either way, it'd be great. I mean, really easy. We know that Marvel Legends and Hasbro loves to reuse molds and bucks, and obviously, like I said, they've given us tons of suited characters already. Just slap on a Wolverine head that they've already used, and then some claws. Actually, kidding, please don't do that. But yeah, I think he'd be a really cool character. I think he'd be a really interesting character on your shelves. And I would like to see that, the green sort of almost Victorian coat, long coat, and the sort of tie, the Colonel Sanders tie. I think it's called a whatever. Either way, give me that the classic iconic comic book look. The character definitely deserves it. He's been around forever. Again, we need to expand our Daredevil villains roster. A few other characters like Scarecrow, Jester. There's other characters that were sort of bumped off of this list that almost made this list specifically for the Owl. I think just because the Owl is a little bit more iconic. He's just been around for a long time. That's why he is number 4 on this list. I think he deserves some love. Number 3, Titania. This one to me seems the most egregious that we haven't gotten a Titania figure. First off, there aren't a lot of female supervillains in the Marvel Universe, especially, big, strong, imposing female villains in the Marvel Universe. That's number 1. Number 2, she's had a, long-standing tie-in, romantic tie-in to the Absorbing Man Crusher Creel, which we've had a few. We've had a Build-A-Figure. Before that, we had figures show up in the Hulk lines. But I think the number one reason it still perplexes me to this day that we haven't had a Titania, besides, like I said, she's sort of an iconic character. She's been sort of the number one She-Hulk villain, sort of She-Hulk's arch nemesis. In fact, there's some really great comics where those two sort of continue their rivalry. But, a few years ago, Marvel Legends gave us 2 figures based off the same buck in the same line. We had Thundra and Valkyrie. At that point, we'd already had a Valkyrie figure, and the version that they gave us, while probably a better figure, it was actually less accurate than the other figure that we got. It was a look that they sort of, I don't know, maybe it was a single Frank Cho drawing. I honestly don't even know if the figure was specifically based off of any look, but it was definitely not the classic Valkyrie look. And we got Thundra. And to me, I like Thundra. I think she's an interesting character too, but we should have gotten, one of those should have been Titania. It makes no sense. Maybe it's the spikes on the arm. Maybe it's a hard thing to sculpt. Either way, goddammit. She's a character that's been around since the Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars. She's, I don't know how many appearances that she's had. She's sort of She-Hulk's number 1 supervillain. Damn it, let's get it. And I think especially now the female sculpts that Marvel Legends has been giving us, I will say I'm actually not a huge fan of that Thundra. I think the torso sculpt is maybe a little bent. Either way, I would actually hope at this point they would give us a brand new buck for it. In fact, maybe I we've gotten a bunch of She-Hulk. We went from having no She-Hulks to a bunch of She-Hulks in the last few years. But maybe a more classic, even maybe a first appearance, Jen Walters She-Hulk, and then maybe also use that same buck for the main body for a new Titania figure. That's what I'm hoping either way. Dan Hasbro, are you listening to me? Look at all my great ideas. But yeah, that's why she's my number 3 most wanted Marvel Legends figure, Titania. Number 2, Tarantula. So I know I said, the characters have never been made by Hasbro or Toy Biz. Now, we've actually gotten quite a few Tarantula figures over the years. And when I say Tarantula, by the way, I am talking the original. I will accept the second one. I do like the second guy to sort of carry the mantle because it's basically the same costume. Just one guy had a mustache. The first guy didn't have a mustache. Second guy had a mustache. It's really the only difference to the overall look. But that's the Tarantula I'm talking about. We've gotten some, Toy Biz versions. We had some, the Spider-Man Classics versions. I think we had at least 2, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've owned every single one because I do love the character that much. In fact, I am going on record as saying I think the OG Tarantula is one of the coolest looking villains ever made. There's just sort of that, simple black and red costume, the sort of tied sash, the sort of Dread Pirate Robertson sort of sash mask, that sort of, I think there's a name for that mask specifically, but he has the tied sash there and on his waist, and I just think he's such a cool looking figure. First of all, he's got little spiked boots. He's got little bladed boots. That's cool, isn't it? Not what the kids are into. It's what I'm into, God damn it. But either way, what a great look. And one thing I will give Hasbro and their team the most amount of credit for is they've given us so many awesome updated versions of the classic Spider-Man villains. There's a few I'm waiting for. Stegron, the kangaroo. I might be the only kangaroo fan on the planet. Who knows? But goddamn it, I think he's cool. Grizzly, let's do it. We have the body. We're giving us Ursa Major. We'll get to Grizzly at some point in one of these lists. But damn it, Tarantula looks cool. He's been around for a long time. There have been a few other characters that have carried the name Tarantula. That's fine. I'll take whatever you can give me, I guess, at this point. But I want the classic red and black version of Tarantula, that sweet costume, the sort of, poison tip boot guy. I love it. I think that's one of the coolest costumes ever designed. I would even do maybe a 2-pack of an updated 70s Frank. We had that sort of, that 2-packs back in the day with Jigsaw, and it had that sort of, was it Ross? I can't remember. It wasn't Selma Buscema. Whoever, anyways. I want that old school, sort of, mutton chop, the sideburns Frank with the, the toilet paper tubes, the sort of first appearance Frank Castle Punisher. And like I said, maybe since, they were, in the same comic, maybe a 2-pack, no, dear God, no, if you did do it, please no Walmart or Target exclusives. Although Target's been actually, I'll take that back. Target's been pretty good with the exclusives recently for their Marvel Legends. Anyways, it's a whole other video, I'm sure. As I'm sure if you're watching this video and you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure you're passionate as I am. Anyways, I'm off topic. 2-pack, Tarantula, first appearance, Frank Castle. I'd buy it. I think other people would too. Especially if you want to make sure that people are, maybe people don't want to buy another Punisher, or maybe people don't want to buy a Tarantula, but they would buy it for, I'm saying you're making the most of your money there. You can, sell 2 figures, reach a wider area. Anyways, I'm off topic once again, but yeah, my number 2 most wanted, Tarantula. So who's my number 1? Let's get to it. Number 1, Goliath. This one is kind of a cheat for my number 1 most wanted, because technically he's a Build-A-Figure. He'd have to be a Build-A-Figure. And no, I'm not talking about Black Goliath. I'm talking about the villain version of Eric Jostyn, a.k.a. Atlas. I'm talking about the Masters of Evil, giant, growing supervillain, Goliath. I I have a personal history with this character. The very first comic book I ever bought as a kid was an issue of the West Coast Avengers that had Goliath on the cover. It's a great comic, stuck in my brain for eternity. But man, he has been a character that's been around for decades, has a, pretty long-standing history as a member, both of the Masters of Evil as the sort of classic, just angry giant guy, and then, his transformation into the more sympathetic, sort of changing his allegiance as, in the early era Thunderbolts. And anyways, I will happily also go on record as saying, if you gave me an Atlas, I'd also be very happy. I don't know if settle is the right word, but either way, I'd be happy with a, Atlas, version of Eric Johnson. But I'm going to go on record as saying I would prefer his supervillain version, especially because we have Giant Man, but we have no, giant supervillains outside of, obviously, Galactus, and then we have the Sentinels and stuff. But I don't count those. I'm just saying a giant growing supervillain either way. And I think, we have Giant Man for the good guys, for the Avengers. I want a classic costume, the sort of brown and gold version of Goliath for my build, for my number one most wanted Marvel Legends. Yes, I think he'd have to be a Build-A-Figure unless you did some sort of special edition box set. In fact, maybe you do a box set, like a San Diego Comic-Con box set, with maybe other versions of other Thunderbolt characters we haven't gotten, characters like Jolt, characters like the Fixer, sort of first wave. I mean, we've gotten Songbird, we've gotten Mach 1, we've gotten Citizen V. Let's get some more of the the sort of first era. I mean, I know there's all kinds of Thunderbolts versions and people have their preferences. I still remember I bought the very first issue off the shelf, got to that last page, had my mind blown, especially now that we're getting a Netflix series. God, I hope it's, well, that's again, another conversation for another day. Anyways, I'm hoping we get a, more Thunderbolts characters, and I think that would be great. Give me an Atlas, but I want to first complete my Masters of Evil lineup. Give me my Goliath. So that's my my top 7. There's more, that I will probably include in a future list. Some figures that were just sort of pushed out of the top 7 for me. And again, so sometimes this list changes day to day. Currently, though, this is my top 7. I'd love to hear you. Maybe you have a completely different list. If you hate my list, let me know in the comment section. Maybe somebody's on your list that I completely forgot about, that I probably also am dying for a Marvel Legends figure for. Anyways, really appreciate it. As this channel always says, buy what you love and support what you love. Until next time, have a great one.